And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is John Novello, award-winning jazz pianist, composer, and best-selling author of the book, The Invisible Architect: How to Design Your Perfect Life from Within, which delves into the intriguing fusion of memoir and channeled transformational self-help principles. John, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Well, we are excited to have you. And before we get into The Invisible Architect, I would like to ask you a little bit about your other book called The Song That Never Ended, which is about how you connected with your wife on the other side. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I've written a lot of critical books in music education and never thought I would be thrown into the metaphysical world or the afterlife or out-of-body experiences in that whole area. I've always been interested in it, but never thought I'd be an author in it. But my wife and I, my first wife, we were really soulmates, and she was a singer, and I'm a pianist and stuff. And she ended up getting cancer, and we had a 18-month fight with cancer. And so we got to say our goodbyes. It wasn't sudden. And so we mentioned and said, we're such soulmates, and we both are sort of have a high spiritual IQ in that area. I said, let's make a little pact. And if it's possible, when you're on the other side, as people say, maybe we can communicate to each other in certain ways, and I don't know how, but I'm pretty good at perception. I've always been psychic all my life, so maybe it'll work. And so she passed away, but it was the interesting thing and how I knew it was going to work. The night she passed, I was holding her hand. She was, winding down her breathing. We knew she was about to leave, and she had cancer, and she was loaded with cancer and going through pain. And all of a sudden, about 2 minutes before she literally left her body and passed, I get a communication from the left side of the room. I could literally feel it coming directionally. And I sort of turned, and clear as you and I are talking, I didn't see her. Some people see apparitions and spirits. I just heard her in my voice. She said, John, I'm free. I'm free. Oh my God, I'm not in pain. And this is incredible. And life continues on. I knew it. I knew it was true, but now I know it was true. Thank you so much. I will be in touch. And just after she said that, she took her last breath as I held her hand. Of course, then I went through my grieving period that we all go through, which was pretty, pretty horrific. But then one night I went to bed, and I had practiced occasional out-of-body exercises and experiences. And I thought, I wonder if I could get out, various drills and exercises that I hadn't done it in a while. Maybe try this. So for a month I tried, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I was getting upset. And then one night I rolled out of bed to go to the bathroom. But in actual fact, I rolled out of my body, turned around and saw my body, and I went, oh, good, I'm out. And that wasn't startling to me that at that moment, because I had done it before. And then I just made a little postulate, because I recalled that when you're out, it's the speed of thought, and whatever you think, you can move. And so I said, I want to see Gloria. Take me to Gloria. And it was the strangest thing. It was like this feeling, this little whooshy sound. Physically, it felt like that. And the next thing I know, she was on a staircase and looked at about 35 years old. When she passed, she was 54. She was beautiful anyway. And I saw her, and I got to talk to her a little bit. And then she kept saying, you got to go back. This is not your time. How the hell did you do this? You're not supposed to be here. I'll be in touch. And I was right back in. So that ended up being an obsession. You can imagine. You got a grieving husband, and you've just seen your wife. And I knew the difference between a dream that are usually non sequitur and the real deal. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go crazy and research this area. So I started reading every book on out-of-body experiences, and I didn't even know there was a universe of ADCs, as they call them, after-death communications, and many, many books and tons of research. So I started reading all of them, and I got into, you know what? With my experiences, I think I have something to say that could help people because I'm a quasi celebrity. Uh, and if I can communicate my story in such a way, this might help other people going through grief and going through loss. And that was the impetus for me to write the song that never ended.
In that book, do you teach people how to have out of body experiences in order to
Actually,
connect?
no, because that book is not about that. Uh, I might have mentioned a couple authors in the book that I studied, uh, but I've had people contact me about that because they want to do that, and then I've done it privately because I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring with my other books, Concept, The Invisible Architect, How to Manifest a Better Life, so that I do it that way. But no, I had read that. I was pretty much self-studied and did that all on my own.
A couple things that I love about your story is one, that first of all, sometimes people leave, especially during terminal illness, before their body dies, just like your
Exactly.
wife did. And another thing is a lot of times when encountering people on the other side, they look about 35. So it's another confirmation.
Yeah, exactly. And I've read that in so many places. And when that happened, and it happened again with my second wife, which we'll get into with the other book, it's very interesting how that is. And this one author that I read, and I can't remember his name, he said, uh, "We all are vain, even on the other side. We want to look good." Maybe.
You never know. Well, if we get to your new book, in the beginning, I mentioned that it's channeled. So did you channel this book?
Yeah, let me explain, but let me back up and get into it. One of the things that's interesting that people will find about my first book, The Song That Never Ended, I didn't want to be perceived as just a grieving, wishful thinking husband who may have had dreams. And so and since I knew it was true, I didn't need to prove that to myself, but the listener, the reader, it's important. So I got the idea one day, you know what, it's going to cost me a lot of money, but I'm going to do research on all the top mediums on the planet. And I'm going to do some experiments. I'm going to do phone medium sessions and block my phone. And I don't want anybody to know who I'm trying to connect with. So I did that with 10 of the top people, George Anderson, Sylvia Brown, you name them, all the top ones. Cost me a heck of a lot of money. But in every case but one, who I think was fraudulent, my wife came through with amazing stuff. And I'll tell you one of the quick stories. The first session I did with the medium in England, I was at my parents' house, and it had only been about 6 months since she passed. And the lady goes, well, there's a short lady coming through, uh, and she's got a tall husband. Does that resonate with you? And I said, well, that sounds like my grandmother who passed years ago, because she was really short and my grandfather was. Anyway, so we talked about that, and she mentioned a couple things my grandmother did that told me it was my grandmother. I won't go into them, but it was already starting off pretty good. But then, out of the blue, the medium says there's a lady that's kicking your grandmother out and really, really wants to talk with you. And she's telling you that she's not only okay and thanks you for your unconditional love and support during her crisis. She didn't say cancer, but she wants to tell you something really important. So I'm sitting there on pins and needles. Am I really talking to her? Oh my God, the whole thing, right? And she goes, remember the red car? Now she's got my attention. Nobody knows about this red car but her and me. When she was struggling and we were struggling financially, I had to sell that car. And I came to her one day and uh, I said, I know you love that right-hand Volvo. It was like the car that the saint used to drive. It looked like a little Ferrari Volvo. She goes, it's okay that you had to sell it because I know we needed the money. I fell out of my chair.
Wow.
I just went, whoa. Nobody could have known that. You just can't take that kind of a win away. And then I did 9 more of those. And so I published all of them in the book. And so people saw that I was corroborating because thesis, the main theme was to let people know, hey, they're still around. They're in a different form. You're going to rendezvous one day. Their song hasn't ended. Hang in there. And so that's how that happened.
Did you say that 9 out of 10 were fraudulent?
No, opposite. 9 out of 10, my wife came through. One of them, it was one of those typical, well, does this resonate you? Oh, does this? And none of it was working. You know what I mean? So I don't think that person was a real medium.
Would you advise people to or not to contact mediums about their loved ones?
Well, there's a lot of organized religion, very stern beliefs about this. So it's hard for me to want to advise if you're open-minded and you're very interested, I would advise yes. But I know some people that have very stiff beliefs and things like that. Oh, this could be the devil talking to you, and don't open up the door to the demon world. I'd advise those people not to do it because with that kind of lack of faith and that kind of pre-belief, things don't go that well. So that's my advice. But otherwise, I'd say definitely there's some very amazing people out there, and I can contact if somebody contacts me, we'll talk about that later. I can give them referrals. It's very, very healing.
Okay, that's great because I was going to ask, how do you determine whether one's legit or not?
Well, I've done a lot of that research. A lot of it had to do with a lot of reviews scientifically and referrals. And so I felt pretty good about the ones that I talked with, except for one that didn't work out.
All right. Well, you mentioned that you've been psychic for most of your life. Was there some sort of spiritually transformative experience that was a catalyst to set this
Right.
in
Yeah, that'll
motion?
lead us into my new book. As I say in the beginning of the book, uh, when I was 3 years old, I was sitting in front of the TV, and the first time I can recall this was at 3. I heard this voice. Now imagine, I'm 3 years old. I heard this voice that was as loud as you and I talking, and I didn't know what it was. I couldn't comprehend it. But I relayed its message to my mom because on TV there was a musician playing, and I kind of was like, Dad, goo goo. I want to do that pointing. But I wasn't doing it on my own volition. I was doing it because of this higher self, inner voice. I didn't know what to call it, right? And so in a few years, uh, I started taking lessons. But ever since that voice has been my companion. Now, in my book, I call it the invisible architect because I didn't believe it was just an inner voice or a higher self. I believe that I'm in contact with the universal consciousness. Now, why I was chosen or how it happened, that's above my pay grade. I don't know. But from that moment on, I used that voice. I followed its advice for information, for business choices, career changes, do's and don'ts. I thought everybody had that voice. Now, later on, I realized that not many people, well, we all have that voice, but most of us are distracted. We have low frequency situations on our lines and we're trying to survive and do this. So it's almost like a radio station that is not tuned in. So if that invisible architect is communicating to many people, they're not listening. So they don't get it. So it takes a little bit of training. So to further answer your question, the impetus to write my book was pretty amazing because my first wife had passed away from cancer, as we just discussed. And then I contacted her, by the way, many times, not just that one OBE. I contacted her many times then. And I got to the point where I finally felt fulfilled and I wasn't obsessed anymore about the other side, because for a while I was way more obsessed with the afterlife and talking with her and doing research than I was with this life. And one day she and a couple spirit guides kind of got a hold of me and said, you know, you got a reason for incarnating here and you're getting stuck. You'll be over there in a little while. Let's get back in the game. And I got back in the game, right? So
Do you think pre-birth you made the decision to be a musician because perhaps your inner architect was reminding you what you're supposed to be doing here?
absolutely, I am now 100% certain that we all have free will at when we incarnate again and what our script is going to be. We help co-write it with expert spirit guide and masters and teachers advice. We don't do it uh, forced. It's not like there's, well, you messed up last time, so your karma is you're going to come back and be a cockroach. And I think that's a bunch of malarkey, right? So life is for lessons. And I believe that an incarnation is to experience that which we are not, right? If you think of B, if you haven't been this, then incarnating into a physical body with a script and then having the veil of amnesia come over ourselves, 98%, is the way then that we go through life. We have free will, we have different exit points plotted out, meaning when we could leave, and we have different paths that we could take given different impetuses. And some people seemed a little more attuned to those. And again, above my pay grade, but you're absolutely spot on. From that first time I saw the keyboard and then almost everything afterwards, it felt like, and it still does, that I've been hooked up to the invisible architect and the afterlife to follow my dreams and carry them out. And every single time I disobey the voice, things happen to me that aren't right. You know what I mean? I go, oh, now, of course, I never disobey the voice. I just trust it. But I totally agree. That was one of my purposes. And the main purpose was also to experience various things as I was trying to master my instrument. So that's why it was chosen.
Do you think that we could have something that we have intense passion for in this life, but it's something that we were successful in the last life? So, for example, let's say if you were for some reason really into painting and you're pretty good at it, but you were never successful at it because that wasn't really where you were supposed to be this life. You're supposed to be a musician. But we keep clinging, or you would keep clinging to being a painter for some reason.
Absolutely. One person asked me once, how the heck did Mozart at 7 years old write his first sonata? And how do these prodigies come about? It seems unfair. Is there a God that just goes, all right, John, you're going to be a genius with 162 and you're going to do, but you're not. That seems to be a very mean type of God. What actually communicates to me better is that person already achieved a certain level of ability in another lifetime. And for whatever reason, it's allowed, or he permeated that veil of amnesia and started to pay attention. So yes, I believe any passionate urge, even if it doesn't become one's total life, is an urge that had already been developed that is sort of coming through and you're paying attention to it. Uh, because I've always had an urge to be sort of a philosopher and study philosophy and majored in mathematics and logic and physics and all that area, but that's not what I chose. What I chose was the passion of creativity in music. But I don't think it's an accident that there's all these other abilities and urges.
So, how do you connect with your inner architect?
So I call it, it's funny you should say inner architect because that was the original name I was going to call the book. I changed it before the release to the invisible architect, which is the real name of the book. But it is an inner voice that developed. And then later on, I realized and I know this could sound blasphemous to other people, I realized I literally was in contact with now what I call, from a non-religious terminology, the quantum intelligent energy field. There is an energy that permeates everything, everybody, and there is a way to be aware of and connect with it. And once we do, all kinds of amazing things happen. Remember the book Celestine Prophecy?
Yes.
Well, that was about this guy's journey to Peru to study 9 different insights. And one of the comments the author made is that on Earth, Earthlings have lost, in general, their connection to this quantum intelligent energy field. And when that happens, we become weak as beings. It would be almost like an example, World War II, you're a soldier and you're on the front lines and there's 5,000 people charging you and you don't know you have air support. So there you are with a few people trying to defend your life when on fact, all you have to do is get on the walkie-talkie and say, hey, 5,000 people, you need to nuke this now. Here are the coordinates, and you're powerful. It's the same thing here when I do my one-on-one mentoring based off the fundamentals of the invisible architect with people. My goal is to raise their frequency, and I raise their frequency by showing them how to become aware of this energy, how to communicate correctly with this energy, and how to delegate this energy, this intelligent quantum energy, to help you create and manifest your life. And it's very simple once it happens. And so that's one of the things that I do, because if you raise somebody's frequency, you become stronger and you're able to create and manifest easy or easier.
Do you think Jesus was speaking about this when he said the kingdom of heaven is within?
Absolutely. And he also stated, I and the Father are one. And he also stated, it is not I that doeth the work, but the Father. So if you look at those maxims, those biblical maxims, he's very enlightenedly telling you that your power is not you, it's the Father. And the kingdom of God is within. And so if you can connect to it and harness it, you can manifest all kinds of things. And he demonstrated that with all the different miracles that well, who knows what is true and what is not true in the Bible. A lot of it is allegorical. But those stories are sort of telling you that he was extremely enlightened and at a very, very high frequency and connected to the Father in such a way that he could create just about anything that he wanted to create.
How is this book different from The Secret or any of the other manifestation books out there?
We are really tracking because you are asking wonderful sequential questions. Perfect.
Great.
Yeah. Now, here's the deal. Without putting any of the law of attraction variations that are out there down, one of the things, and we sort of touched upon it in my last little soliloquy here, is that people don't get that they aren't doing the manifestation. They think they are. Oh, positive thinking and likes like attract likes, and if I do this, and if I will achieve this. My realization, which is what makes this book, in my opinion, unique, and why I get the results I get when I do one-on-one mentoring on helping people design better lives. The biggest fundamental and problem I have is getting people to understand that this quantum energy intelligent field exists and it's there for you to use. And you aren't the power. It is the power. And you simply need to delegate. Like an executive, the best executives or CEOs that run companies, they don't do much of anything other than delegate, organize, delegate, delegate. They find somebody who's a great employer, that's a good marketer, and they post them and they do. It's the same thing. If it's you against the world, the physical manifest universe, trying to manifest whether it's scarcity or relationships or whatever, you trying to do that is like the guy with the walkie-talkie trying to challenge the enemy coming over the hill rather than relay back to headquarters command and get some help. And so my my mentoring and my modality shows people how to A, become aware of the invisible architect and believe, because you have to have faith. Some people think faith is woo-woo. Faith is actually energy that is part of the manifestation process. So becoming aware of the invisible architect, this invisible energy, and having faith that it can do anything, and then locating your desires, and then learning how to communicate with the architect so the architect will manifest your desires for you. That is what makes it different and why I get the successes that I do. That's what's different compared to The Secret and all the other positive thinking, law of attraction type books, in my opinion. I haven't read every one of them, but the ones that I've done research on, that's either missing or isn't made clear. And so people still think that they narcissistically have the power when in fact they aren't the power. They are the user and the delegator of the power.
Do you think first that you have to be able to resonate with that field of energy to be able to connect with it?
Absolutely. You have to raise your frequency. I'll give you a statement here. I want to read it to get exactly. This is my vision, my mission. My vision is to significantly transform the quality of a person's life by raising their mindset frequency towards the God or invisible architect frequency, as discussed in my book. And everything is energy, right? Your body's made up of energy. There's no solid body or solid matter. There's all kinds of atoms and molecules in space. And there was a physicist, I think it was Wheeler, who said the universe, the physical universe, is a participatory universe, meaning that the observer interacting with the physical universe changes the universe. That's a physics law that's been, I don't know, tested over and over again. So if everything is energy, thought is also energy. The mind is static energy and thought is active energy. So when you use your mind and your thoughts, that energy interacts with every other type of energy that is around. So that's why the law of causation, which I prefer to call it rather than the law of attraction, even can work, because since we're all connected and we're all energy, we all are one. Since we're all one, there is the possibility that we can influence each other with energy, and thought is the energy. Our imagination and our thought is energy. It's actually measurable. And that's how the manifestation occurs, because our energy resonates and can resonate if it's raised up enough. In other words, if you're sitting around drinking beers all day and, at such a low frequency of operation, there's no way you're going to resonate. I almost say the architect is sitting there with its arms going, yeah, he's not ready for me yet. He's got to go through a bunch of stuff before he gets. So that's why the one-on-one helps people raise their energy. Now, some people are born at a higher energy. Maybe that's got to do with their past life incarnations and their pre-birth soul agreements and what they've achieved or didn't achieve in another lifetime. Because to me, a lifetime is sort of like Groundhog Day, where what's the actor's name? Was it Jim Murray?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray has to go through that day over and over and over again until he finally starts realizing certain things, and he changes from being a narcissistic ego maniac into a more self service of others. But he had to go through all these experiences. So Groundhog Day is almost sort of like a theme describing reincarnation and why we go through various difficulties and why we learn lessons, and we don't cross over. and then just have the invisible architect say, well, you screwed up, you're going to go burn forever. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? It's more like, hey, how'd you enjoy that? That was pretty good. Wow, that was pretty heavy. Okay, well, we're going to have a little R&R now. We're going to review everything, and uh, and then we're going to decide if you want to go back and further learn A, B, C, or D. So it's more of a rehabilitation when you cross over and decide what you learned, what you didn't learn. So your question is, yes, you have to get up to that resonation point. And I think, I don't know why it happened, but when I was 3 years old, somehow I must have been there and heard that voice.
Can you give my audience some simple tips to raise their own energy?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Uh, since everything has a frequency, a rock has a frequency, a movie has a frequency. One of the things to observe is when you're at a higher frequency is how you feel. Why do people need vacations? Well, their white suit, to use an analogy, has been corrupted and alloyed and is dark, and they need a vacation to raise their frequency. So literally just getting in their car and going to the beach and looking at nature and the waves coming in and relaxing and chilling is one quick way of raising a frequency. Watching an incredible uplifting movie will raise your frequency. Hanging out with creative, uplifting, validation type people will raise your frequency. All those types of things will raise it. In the end, guess who can raise their frequency on command? You. You literally can say, I am at a higher frequency. I am happy. Now, what happens is, and here's an interesting part of my book, the mind, being conditioned, pushes back. Like, I'm at a higher frequency. I am happy. Today is fantastic. Those are your 3 affirmations. Then the mind goes, nice try. Yesterday was horrible. And you got this meeting with Joe Blow, and you know he's a jerk, and blah, blah, blah. So the mind starts whack, 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 chatter, chatter, noise, noise, noise. Now, I have something in my book that I discovered from physics that works in the thought world. In the world of physics and mathematics and the manifest universe, the physical universe, we all know, most of us know, that no two objects can occupy the same space at the same time. Otherwise, you would fall through your chair and through the earth and whatever. Fortunately, the same is true in the thought universe. No two thoughts can occupy your attention in the same thought space at the same time. Sequentially, they can, but not at the same time. So if you take that as an axiom, let's apply that. So you wake up in the morning, you get the mail, you open it up, and it's a damn tax audit on Monday. And you go, oh my God. So now you're going off into negative land. Your mind and thoughts are going, oh my God, I got to cut my guys away on vacation. If I don't do this, I don't do this. All you have to do it right at that moment, and if you get good at it within seconds, is replace that negative thought with any positive thought, but it would be better if it's the exact opposite positive thought. And it's no different than if you were walking down the street and you had a pebble in your shoe. Would you stupidly keep walking on it and being in pain? No, you'd stop, take your bloody shoe off, and take the stone off and go, oh, that feels better. It's the same thing. So the best thing to do in that situation would be, you know what? I can't do anything about that now. My tax guy is an expert. So I'm going to give that to him on Monday, and I'm postulating that everything is going to be fine. Bingo. Now, you just pushed back against your mind who is pushing back. After a while, you get so disciplined and so good that any negative thought undesirably entering your space, whether it's from another person, a movie, or your own mind, you can recognize it, A, which is the key. Some people don't even recognize when these things take them over. It's almost like they need an exorcist. The thought takes them over. They don't even know. They just go, yeah, I'm having a funky day. They don't realize they can do anything about it. So you have to get some discipline. But once you recognize it, and if you know the axiom, law of thought substitution, you can substitute a thought. It could be as simple as, I love my puppy. I love my new puppy. That would even work. Or I love my wife. Or the exact ideal opposite thought, which when you get really expert at it, you can do and go right to it. So I don't even know how we got on that subject. You asked me a question.
So you raise your frequency, you connect with the field of energy, then you communicate your desires. After that, do you just surrender the outcome and see what happens?
Good question. That brings me into the main principle of my book called the be, do, have sequence. Be plus do equal have. Now, most people have it backwards. Human beings, for some reason, seem obsessed with have. If I had this, I'd be able to do A, B, C, and I would become or be blah. If I had the connections he had, well, yeah, his father is Steven Spielberg. If I had his connections, I would. That's have, do, equal be. The most successful people, unknowingly in most cases, becomes natural in some cases, know that you have to be what you want to achieve. You literally be. So in the thought universe, and this comes under the chapter of the different universes, you have to understand there are different universes. There's your universe, the other people's universe, the thought universe, the physical universe, which is a very low frequency universe, and the God or the invisible architect universe. So putting the architect universe aside, your universe, you have to put your attention on be, not have. So if you have a undesirable situation in your life, that means you've already have that. So you're at the end of the be plus do equal have. Psychoanalysis and all these other kinds of therapies, in my opinion, and they have some workability. They don't get at the crux. Put the patient into the have. Well, when did that happen? And this and that and this and that and blah, 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 blah. So if you concentrate on the have, you get more of the have. But if you find out what created the have, which is the be, then you can uncreate and change the have. But you don't want to spend millennia trying to find out what be created that have, when in fact, all you have to do is create a better be. So if you're trying to be, let's say your have is scarcity of money. You want more money. So that means you have, whether you believe it or not, some kind of scarcity desire or be in your be do have that's making you make decisions that are creating eventually this undesirable have. So the way I work with it is I get people to list all their undesirable situations, little, big, doesn't matter. That's the have. And then we take them one at a time and decide to create a better be, which will get rid of that undesirable have. So if your be is, I am wealthy, just to be simple here for a minute, and you believe that, have faith, the invisible architect starts connecting to that high frequency because now you're operating and interacting at its frequency. I'm not sure if I should say he and she and anything given all the considerable woke stuff going on with pronouns, but anyway, that's just a side joke. So, you start connecting with that energy when you say something like, I am wealthy, or I am a creative genius, or I am an amazing jazz musician. That is a resonance that occurs, and it's like the architect going, oh, okay, he's got my attention now. He is stating emphatically, and he has faith, and he's got no doubt and no negativity. I guess I better get busy. Neil Donald Walsh has a book out called Conversations with God, and he says, God has one answer. No matter what you say to him, he goes, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. So if you go, I have this headache and please help me, and then God's going, okay, he's got a headache. In other words, he and you are co-creating and manifesting more of the same headache. Whereas if you said, I am healthy, it's a whole different phenomena. So you hook up to the architect's resonance by postulating a B that is part of the desire, but you have to get expert at doing that, because the moment you do that, for some reason, the mind pushes back and all these different counter thoughts and doubts occur. And if you don't handle those, you're dead in the water. And that's almost all failures of applying the law of attraction glibly is why it doesn't work.
It's so interesting because I was just about to ask, what if you're in crisis mode? How do you just have faith and still say, I'm rich or whatever?
Well, that's where I decided, because I didn't want to be a one-on-one metaphysical law of attraction, design somebody's life, Eckhart Tolle, new mentor. That I'm a musician. That's what I love to do. I love inspiring people. But I started getting all these communications when my book became a bestseller. Hey, do you do this? Can you help me with this? Do this and that. And I went, why don't they just read the book? There's a whole bunch of drills and exercises in the book. And I realized very quickly, because I have a lot of hours of one-on-one teaching as a music teacher, I went, you know what? 8 out of 10 people cannot read, duplicate, understand, and crucially apply. Don't know why we've got to this level of degradation, but it isn't just reading that's a problem. It's the 4 things: reading. Then you got to duplicate what you read, which means you have to understand the words and the sentences. And then you have to really go, oh, I got it. What's that famous word in Stranger in a Strange Land? Grok. I've grokked it. I got it. I understand it. Then, even then, people fail, because now you got to have enough discipline to apply these fundamentals to get a result. So I realized that one of the secrets is to have a mentor. And if you read any of, what's his name's, Think and Grow Rich, what's his name?
Is that Napoleon Hill?
Yeah, Napoleon Hill. He talks about mentoring and mentorship. Almost all great people either have selected or have been influenced by a mentor or mentors in the music world, the athletic world, business world. Why is that? I've come to the conclusion because a mentor becomes an expert in the area and has already achieved usually what that guy wants. So there's a lot of trust and faith, and there's accountability. So I started doing mentoring on the principles in my book, and lo and behold, I was getting, unbelievable results, whereas the guy on his own couldn't get through, especially what you just stated. Somebody has cancer and they're trying to miraculously heal themselves, or they've lost their job or whatever, without a mentor or mentors pulling them up by their bootstraps and having accountability and guiding them. No, here's what you do next. Until they get hold of the fundamentals and can apply them on their own. It's very difficult for the average person to do it.
Have you applied what you're teaching to your own musical success?
Absolutely. That's the impetus for me writing the bloody book. One day, I woke up 4 years, I've been here 3 years, 4.5, 5 years ago. I was always, remember, at 3 years old, this happened to me, right? So for all these years, I've been applying and organizing and researching these concepts up and channeling stuff, because you asked about this earlier. So what happened was, one day I woke up and the invisible architect voice said, hey man, you need to write a book. And I went, not another, because I've written 4 music books and then the other metaphysical after death. And I know how much effort's involved in research. And I said, no, not another book. Please just let me. It's like I'm having an argument with the invisible architect. And it says, no, this one's going to be the most important book you ever wrote, because everybody needs to know that I'm available and I'm within, and as within, without. This is not supposed to be just for a few people, and the world is losing itself, just like what's his name in the Celestine prophecy. We are gradually becoming disconnected from our source. And if you can write a book that's non-religious based, non-organized religion, and general principles that can be applied on who I am, the energy source that I am, and how to interact with me. And you can show people how they can use me and this energy source, then that would be a really incredible service to mankind. I was like, boy, you're really putting me in a spot here to mankind. I just like blowing jazz, you know? So I kind of fought it for about 6 months. And I know the process of writing a book, you got to usually get a title and start doing an outline. So I didn't have the title. I started writing an outline. Okay, energy source. You got to first of all figure out that there is such a thing as this energy, and then you got to learn how to. So I started putting an outline together. And as I put the outline together, I became more and more obsessed. And all of a sudden, after about 6 chapters of just putting the outline together, the headings, it was like automatic writing. I woke up, sat down, and it was just coming out like crazy. I had no blocks. As a matter of fact, it was messing up my life and with my wife. And we'd go out to dinner, and I'm going, hold it. And then I'd get my phone out and start doing this. And I can't lose this brilliant idea that's not mine. And after a while, she became what we call in the business a book widow, because I'd be waking up in my underwear at 3 a.m. and having to go sit in front of the computer, which I used to do to write songs too. I used to write songs that way or in my dream. So to me, it was channeled. I got contacted by the architect. I almost got an order from the architect because I fought it for almost 6 months. And then I primed the pump by starting the outline, and it kind of probably, I guess, just went, all right, he's ready for the download. Bam. And the principles came out. I'm not saying I didn't have to do a little research here and organization here, but basically that's what happened.
Have you ever considered that the field wants us to be aware of it?
Right,
But when we come here, we come with amnesia and we don't remember it.
right. Here's my understanding of that. Take a look at the macrocosmic point of view. Let's assume 1,000 lifetimes as an arbitrary mathematical number. In each lifetime, you had a different script and you wore a different hat or hats. Imagine the chaos if you remembered all those, let alone would you actually achieve your spiritual growth intended in a lifetime if you already knew what your purpose was? No. So it's part of the game for some reason. A, you don't want to remember your past lives in general, although some people have breakthroughs and have written books on it. And B, the moment you incarnate, the veil of amnesia is part of the game. So you can go through the trials and tribulations and challenges and difficulties of life and make decisions and have free will. Because the architect can't just go, it's like Star Trek, right? When you have the what's the interference?
The prime directive?
Prime directive, yeah. You're not supposed to interfere, even though once in a while they do to make a series good. You're not supposed to interfere because we've got free will. If it could just interfere all the time and you'd be cheating, you wouldn't really learn your lesson. Like, for instance, uh, my wife, the biggest, most incredible story that's in the front part of my book had to do with my current wife, who, by the way, just passed away a couple of years ago of cancer. It's my second wife. Why would I incarnate and agree to lose 2 wives? It's bad enough to lose anything, let alone 2. Well, here's the answer. She contacted me after my first wife died, sent me an email. Hey, John, remember me? It's Barb from our childhood. And I went, yeah. 2 weeks before she contacted me, psychically, I thought of her and I went, okay, something's going to happen with my first girlfriend. She contacts me. Make a long story short, we get in touch by phone. She eventually says, I want to come out and visit you. She's an interior designer. So she books a flight. Remember, I'm psychic. I can't stop it. 7 to 8 days before the flight, the architect says she can't fly that day. And I'm like, why? She can't fly that day. Something's not right with that flight. That's all it said. It didn't give me any details. So I call her up. I said, you don't know me. It's been 36 years since we've seen each other. You're going to think this is woo-woo, or you're going to think that I've got cold feet. But I know for a fact that that's not a good day to fly. So please just trust me. Book it any other day. She went through all kinds of pushback, and her family was saying, oh, he's just a crazy jazz musician. He probably has booty call with another girl. He's a widower. Don't get involved with him. And I had to yell at her. She finally went, okay. She booked it for Friday. That morning, that was 9/11, and she was on the one flight.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I wrote it in the book to get people's attention, because when I woke up at 10:30, which is late back east, it means it already happened because that's 1:30 back east. She left all these messages on my machine. Oh my God, how did you know? Guess what? Blah, blah. Everybody. So now I'm a hero where, 7 days earlier, I was a piece of you know what. And of course, like I tell everybody, if that wasn't a sign from the architect that her and I should tie the knot and get married, then I would have been an idiot. And so I figured out what had happened is I incarnated this lifetime and agreed to two losses for my particular spiritual growth. I learned a lot of service to others from helping my wife fight cancer for 2 years. And then I finished this book with my current wife, who just passed away, and we moved to Tennessee together. And 13 months after we moved, she died suddenly of a stroke. It was devastating to me. Now, first of all, I wrote the book, The Song That Never Ended, so I know she's still alive. So I've got that. I know how to do OBEs. So a couple nights I went and I visited her. Same thing happened. John, go back. I got into this staircase in this great marble hall. It was spiral, and she was at the top, and she saw me, and she looked at me again. She's going, "What are you doing here? I should have figured you would do this. It's not your time." And I'm laughing, and I'm walking up the stairways trying to, please don't send me back. Let me at least hug you. That's what I thought. Bango, I went back again. So I visited her a few times, but these last 2 years have been so double-edged sworded, meaning the growth that I have experienced from this sudden loss. I am such a better and different person with a higher frequency, and I'm pretty much just not only just helping people by playing music and entertaining them, inspiring them, but I'm doing this new mentoring and service to others because I've grown, and I would have not grown had I not experienced the second loss. And so I actually went and had an Akashic reading. I don't know if you ever heard of Akashic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Common topic.
And I had several of them, and a couple of them confirmed exactly that that was why I agreed to this. And she said, it takes a big person to agree to, not many people agree to stuff like that. You're on your enlightenment path, continue. And so I'm at one with the whole thing now.
Do you think it's possible that some people decide pre-birth that they are going to have a life of suffering, loss, failure, and they never come into contact with this information that you're providing today?
Absolutely. I feel sorry for that situation. I think it's almost unfair. But guess what? The moment they cross over, they do their life review, they meet with their spirit guides and family, and it's almost like a, wow, I can't believe I agreed to that. I'm so glad to be back home. So, as George Anderson, the famous medium, states in his book, We Don't Die, and then there's another book he wrote called Ask George Anderson. Uh, he's done so many medium readings with so many souls that crossed over that the whole book is pretty brilliant, because the answers to the questions aren't opinions. They're answers from the souls on the other side. Very paranormal, spiritual, metaphysical stuff. And one for one, everybody that gets over there, no matter what the difficulty was, they wouldn't have traded it for anything because of the rewards and the growth that happened.
If we add to my previous question, could you say that the people that are watching are supposed to be watching this and should be trying to improve their situation.
Wait, you mean the spirit guides that are watching us going through
I'm
this?
saying
Or
anybody who happens to be watching this video today.
oh, okay, got it, got it,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And they should be I can't imagine, and I run into people like this all the time, and I'm not thinking of them in any condescending way, but not wanting to improve and grow is actually completely an antithesis for the reason why they have incarnated. But whatever the reason is, and whatever their pre-birth agreements were, uh, I don't know. And I'm sure they have everything to do with them going through a life of sort of not know and just be thrown around like a ping pong ball with difficulties after difficulties. And then they cross over and do their life review and go, oh, oh, oh. Now, the good thing that I found out is once you see the lessons that you missed while you were here, or learn the lessons that you learned while you were here, you retain those as part of your beingness. So when you go into the next lifetime, even though you have amnesia with whatever your script and your hat's supposed to be, you still come at a higher level of beingness, which is why uh, Bill Murray, after a certain amount of Groundhog Days, grew to the person he was. And so I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm positive, I don't want to sound so certain, that we keep growing and we remember that growth and we take that growth with us. But the amnesia, depending on the script that we've agreed to, is what sort of takes that growth out of the picture for a while so you can learn the new lesson, but you never really fully lose it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Good question.
In doing my preparation for today's discussion, you have recorded with Donna Summer. How did
Uh-huh.
that come about?
Another architect session. I went to Japan with a band called Taste of Honey. They had a hit song in 1978 that we won a Grammy for called Get Down Boogie Oogie Oogie. That's a disco tune. Now, what's a jazz guy doing in a disco band? That's what I asked the architect. I was in a store one day and this brother comes up. He goes, hey, I like your playing. We got a record deal and we have a disco band and blah, blah, blah. So he calls me a few weeks later, says, hey, looks like our record's going out the top. And I was broke. So I was very reluctant to want to take this musical job that I didn't really have passion for, but I took it. One of my few moments of lack of integrity due to money. So we go on tour. Within about 6 weeks, we're #1 in the world with this silly tune, Get Down. Now, a lot of people like it. I'm not putting it down, but from a jazz perspective, it wasn't very challenging. I wasn't really happy about it. So we go to Japan to play at the famous Budokan Hall in Tokyo. We had 2 days off, and I went, wow, I've never been to Japan. I think I'm going to go roam around by myself. So I went down to the concierge and I said, hey, where's the absolute best Japanese local grown food? Well, you got to get on the orange line and the green line subway and take it down to the Tokyo wharfs. And on every corner, there's a neighborhood Japanese restaurant. Nobody speaks English, but it doesn't matter. They have pictures of all their stuff. Just point to it. That's way better than the hotel Japanese food. And I said, okay. So I jumped on there, went down, must have went 7 miles to get there. It was about 3 in the afternoon. And I walk out of the subway, and there I am in this neighborhood. I'm the only American there, literally. And I'm walking around and I see all these little restaurants. So I go into one and I order the food by pointing to the wax figures and everything. Having a good time. They're treating me nicely. Two sumo wrestlers on the left side of me are watching a Sony Triniton and betting, and they buy me each a beer. I don't even drink alcohol, but when a 400-pound sumo wrestler buys you a beer, you sort of, when in Rome, do as the Romans. So I took a sip out of each one and they shook hands. So I didn't realize how long I was in there. So I go to leave. It's in the winter. It's dark outside. I don't know where I am because I was walking around the wharfs. I see Tokyo in the distance. You can't miss it. It's a huge skyscraper city. And I went, and you can't call a cab, and there's no cell phone at that time, right? So I'm kind of screwed, and I don't speak Japanese. So I said, well, it's only 7 miles. How long will it take me to walk 7 miles? I'll just head towards the light. But I really wish I had a limo. It's in my book. You'll know I'm not making it up. Within 10 seconds, I hear, "Hey, white boy, what are you doing down here?" And I went, my inner, I thought it was my inner voice, but I could tell it was not. The inner voice doesn't seem to be male or female. It's just a voice. I turned around. Oh, and I said, why did, because I had a band limo. Why did I not take the band limo? What is wrong with me? I wish that, turn around after the voice says, "Hey, white boy, what are you doing down here?" Oh, no. "Hey, white boy, do you need a ride?" That's what it said. So I turn around and there's this stretched limo and the window's going down, and Donna Summer peeks her voice, her head out and says, she doesn't know my name. She's seen me at rehearsal. And I looked, I said, "Donna." She goes, "I know you from rehearsal. What are you doing down here? Do you need a ride or something?" And I go, "Oh my God, do I need a ride? You won't believe what happened to me." Opens the door, gets in the car, 45-minute ride with Donna Summer. We hit it off like crazy. Talk about the architect orchestrating something beautiful. We get back that evening. I went down into the bar room. She comes down. Al Jarreau comes down. All these celebrities were there to play this festival. And I ended up playing piano and hit it off. 6 months later, I get a call from Donna Summers, um, a music director. "Donna would like to know if you'd like to play with her." And I said, "Absolutely." And I laughed so hard. I just went, we can't orchestrate these things. There's no way. That's why I try to tell people we are not the power. The power is what has all this ability to orchestrate. So I've got about 20 of these type of stories in my book.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
I'm totally open to that, and I'm loving doing that. And that's how people usually get a hold of me. And if they want to do the one-on-one mentoring, I don't know if we'll post the link or if I should say it on the video, how to get a hold of me. You tell me.
What is your website?
The mentoring website is go.johnnovelloauthor.com/register. go.johnnovelloauthor.com/register. And my main website, you can also still get a hold of me for questions and anything. The one I just said is for mentoring. Otherwise, it's just johnnovelloauthor.com. They can ask me any question, I'll answer it, and get my book there, all my books, my music books, and the new Invisible Architect book, or find out all the details on how my one-on-one mentoring works, where I apply all these principles, show them how to hook up to the architect. I have a term for that called spiritual mechanics. Spiritual mechanics is how to become aware of and network with the architect and interact with the architect so it can help you manifest your dreams.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Well, I've actually been ordered to write another book by the architect, and I have a tentative name considering all the grief I went through losing my current wife. It was more than the first wife because it was sudden. So the working title, I'm writing a book about grief, but there's been so many of those, just like there's so many law of attraction books. I wanted it to be different, and it will be different because it'll be based on some of the fundamentals of the song that never ended and the Invisible Architect. So the tentative title I have is "To Grieve is to Growth." To grieve is to grow. That is the question. That's the tentative title. And I think that would help people because I think when people are really grieving, they don't really sometimes know that they are growing. And if they keep that in mind, the grief will speed up and they'll get more growth out of it rather than just "why me?"
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Yes, the invisible architect is within and ready willing and more than enough able to manifest any of your dreams and move you to the perfect life. But you have to invite it into your life because it gave us free will.
John, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.